following is a presentation of WLCN 96.3 FM and WLCNonline.com.
and welcome to Viewpoint, your program of personalities, politicians, and perspectives. With a new format this morning, some of you have already discovered it. We're going online live with WLCN.com on your television at home. That ought to ruin your morning to look up and see Bill Gossett at 8:15 in the morning. Welcome aboard our associate here, Mr. Loyd Kirby, who is born a pretty face. He shaved this morning, so we're in good shape.
Actually, I didn't shave this morning, so...
no, it's my eyes. That's
all right. Maybe I ought to clean your glasses there. But.
I decided to do the public a favor and stand after the razor this morning. I'd like to welcome aboard our Wisconsin critic, our traveling critic, Lois Harvey of across Wisconsin. Good morning to you, Mrs. Harvey. How are you this morning? I trust you're up and going and had a good night. Anyway, we have a new format this morning because our guest failed us. So we're going to ask our listeners to be our guest. And I got to thinking about this, and when we lose a loved one in the community, they have a memorial. Usually it's listed in the obituary and the write-up of the funeral, which, by the way, I may be stepping on some toes, and that's okay. I'm old enough, I don't mind that. Obituaries, they charge the families an awful lot of money for those obituaries, and it includes all punctuation marks, if I understand this correctly. We're in the news business, so I may be kind of stepping across the line a little bit, but I think it's unconscionable to charge a family $500 for a obituary for somebody really a huge contribution to the community and beloved and so forth. Anyway, that's my stump for today. The purpose that I had in mind today was trying to talk about donations to our loved ones, families, when they leave us. Sometimes a bereaving person doesn't really know where she'd like the money for Dad to go. And so Mr. Kirby and I thought about this, and I thought we'd bring our listeners into this conversation this morning and make you a part of the show. We'd like to have you make some suggestions. For instance, there's some awfully nice TV ads out there that are really hard-hitting, particularly those that involve our kids with the Shrine Hospitals and so forth, and St. Jude's, and those are great commercials, and rightfully so. But we have some real need here in the community. Small communities such as Lincoln have real needs of their own. I speak directly now to the Salvation Army for maybe perhaps not number one, but certainly high up there on the list. So if you're kind of stuck somewhere along the line, let's get in the conversation and make some suggestions as to where you think somebody might make an appropriate contribution in the memory of somebody. For instance, I'm sure the fire department has an emergency squad. They'd be tickled to death to have a couple of bucks set their way. There are numbers of those. The Red Cross, Salvation Army. So those of you who are out there in the listening world and have some comments, 217-648-5510. Call in and make us your own suggestions, and I don't think I can put you on the payroll, but we'll do it. Anyway, call in and ask Mr. Kirby or Old Man Gossett what we think of your suggestions. It's a time of life when you want to make your buck count. By the way, I noticed, speaking of doing nice things for nice people, Courier had a nice write-up today of one of the great coaches we had here in Lincoln, Illinois, and a really fine gentleman, Floyd B. Floyd has gone now for a short time, but the Illinois Coaches Association gave Floyd a really nice honor, and so we doff our hats to the B family. Nice to see these nice things happen. 648-5510. Call us if you have some suggestions. Mr. Kirby, my voice is getting old, so it's getting.
You're doing a fine job, though. So
getting to be as old as I am.
Well, and you're right. There are certainly, when you're at that time, there are a lot of different options as far as ways to honor the memory of a loved one. As you mentioned, there are great organizations such as the Salvation Army Community Action, United Way, all of those organizations do things in the community. You can also honor the memory of loved ones, maybe if they had a particular interest. For example, if someone was an animal lover, I know the Humane Society is certainly a worthwhile organization that could use assistance. Of course, we've got several food pantries in town and in the county that could
never go wrong with a food pantry.
Absolutely.
I'm amazed when I leave here on Wednesday mornings and drive past Holy Family Corner there, how busy that food pantry is on each Wednesday, and that's just one food pantry.
Right, right, and there are a few. So
yes. Each and every one fill a real need.
That's for sure. That's for sure. And then there are other sort of specialized organizations that maybe aren't what we would think of as traditional community service, but they do serve a vital role, such as the Genealogical Association.
Exactly.
If you have, it doesn't provide food necessarily or shelter to those who are in need, but those who are looking to find out more about, their ancestors and the history of the town and so forth certainly could.
And our fraternal orders, and that would include the ladies' organizations as well, they usually have their own charity. I remember the Elks for years. Now imagine using these words in today's terminology. The crippled children's. My father was chairman of that committee, and I served as chairman many years later. Crippled Children's Trust, a benevolent and protective order of Elks, and they did a whale of a job. They did exactly that. They were serving the crippled children in the community, and we had an orthopedic surgeon come from Peoria at that time. I have no idea where they're coming from now, but it was once a month, and these kids saw somebody on a regular basis, and the lady in charge of that was Irma Potter, God love her. Irma Potter was a Logan County history or health department, and with all the good they do out there with all the bureaucracy on 3rd Street, no one could outdo Irma Potter.
That's for sure.
God love her. She'd call me and say, Johnny so-and-so needs something, and I'd say to her, Mrs. Potter, whatever you say they need, you just go ahead and get it. We'll cover the cost. But she'd call me every time, and I said, Mrs. Potter, don't bother yourself with that. If you think they need it, just get it and we'll take care of it. But she was the county nurse at that time. My goodness, this is before all the bureaucracies and so forth. Right. And by the way, they do a great job out there on 3rd Street. And I talked with Mr. Don Cavey yesterday. He was apologetic that he couldn't come this morning. We had a cancellation. And Don's going to join us on the 25th, which will be the last Wednesday of this month. We'll find more about the Logan County or the State of Illinois Health Department out there on 3rd Street. Crippled Children's Trust. That brings back. My dad was vitally involved in that, and he would get so involved with a youngster that it would bother him, and so that shows that was just one individual. But the depth of the meaning for somebody needed a crutch or something, right? They got it.
Sure.
So think in terms of other ancillary ways to give money in memory of somebody, rather than the conventional Danny Thomas. By the way, some of those commercials on television today are really hard-hitting. They're good. I like those Shriners hospitals. They're excellent. And there's one young man on there, God knows how old he is now. He must be in his 20s. He's been there forever, and he's still a great spokesman for them. And you sit there and wonder in your chair as you have your coffee, how old can that guy be by now?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So, as you mentioned, there are certainly several organizations nationally, but also locally. Another organization you were talking about, Fraternal Orders, which brought to mind with me anyway, several veterans organizations. We've had different Marine Corps League and other organizations here on Viewpoint the past few weeks. Those would certainly be worthwhile organizations, especially if the person who passed away maybe was a member of the military.
Yeah, those two gentlemen we had last week, and we talked about the military squad at the time of somebody's death. that's a real meaningful job they do. And they step to the plate and do a really professional job of it. I mentioned Bob Sullivan last week because he does the presentation of the flag to the family, and he does it in a very professional, direct way. And organizations such as the American Legion, it takes a lot of money to keep a place like that open. I know you don't think of it normally when you're writing a check for contribution to it. So think of their military organizations, veterans of foreign wars. Sure. They've had their financial problems. All these veterans organizations can use a couple of bucks. So you had a good point there, Mr. Kirby.
Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. So, but the VFW, you mentioned, the Eagles come to mind. The Fraternal Order of Police. I don't know. Is the 40 and 8 organization? Are they still around?
I can't answer that question. Somebody from the American Legion could call us and straighten us out. Yeah.
It might take a while to straighten us out, but they can.
Well, somebody has to put his beer down and go to a phone.
And then, of course, as you mentioned, local firefighters organizations, Logan County Paramedics Association, all of those organizations will certainly take donations and find a useful.
Well, they all serve a useful purpose in our own community.
Right.
And that's what we are here. We are just a small community unto itself, and we have to look after one another. And sometimes people get a little stumped on where to write a check. And I might add, too, if you know where you want to write the check to, your funeral director of the family will say to it that it goes to the right place. Somebody has to worry about that. They don't have to worry about it at all. Just give it to your funeral director and it's taken care of.
Sure. And then another area we haven't talked about yet that certainly can always use funding, educational institutions, whether it's, grade schools, community college locally. The high school has a foundation where they provide scholarships to students. So if you have a loved one who maybe was a teacher or active in education, that might be a nice way to honor their memory as well.
I can't think of a better way to put $50 in to enhance somebody's education. So I don't think that I was even aware, or I've forgotten that they had a foundation out there at Lincoln Community High School. Nope. By the way, we're lucky here in this community to have the school administrators we enjoy. We've got some people who are on top of their game, and it's a joy to know that our educational dollars are being spent wisely or as judiciously as possible. So we're going to invite the listeners again to call us 217-648-5510. You may have some other ideas that we hadn't thought of as far as to some place to go to put your money in honor of someone. 648-5510. Go ahead, Loyd.
Well, another category, I guess, that would be appropriate would be if you have a particular religious affiliation. Certainly churches and religious organizations, I know, count on donations for a large part of their ability to do what they do.
Sure, you can buy your way through the gate.
Well, I guess you have enough money and know the right people.
Don't want to step on the Episcopal priest's toes here, or Father Donaldson at the Holy Family. Holy Family, I'll go back to that a minute because as I drive past it in a short time here, there'll be a long list of cars. And a young lady who's had some serious health problems had been in charge of that. Carolyn Webster has done a great job doing through the years with that. And I suspect they miss her guiding hand a little bit there. But they do a tremendous amount of good. Our food pantry right there on Logan Street, which is Logan County, they're busy. And that shows that there is a true need out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we mentioned, there are several food pantries in addition to the Holy Family food pantry. There's a Jefferson Street Christian Church food pantry, the Lincoln Logan food pantry, Park Meadows Baptist Church has a food pantry, the Salvation Army has a food pantry, and I know there are a few others. So it's definitely a need. There's a need out there, and several organizations stepping up to the plate to try and help that. And certainly any donation that folks could give would help them.
Well,
meet that need?
Most, if not all, churches, when they take up the collection, at that time they'll take up a collection for the food pantry somewhere, and that money goes to the altar, just those products go to the altar, just as the money does, to be blessed and taken out and used in the community. So 648-5510. Somebody out there call in with another idea.
Yeah. If you're looking to me, you went to the well, I think, as much as you're going to get here. I mean, we talked about religious organizations, educational organizations. I'm sure there are other community service type organizations out there which maybe don't quite get as much publicity as some of the ones we've mentioned. Ones that meet. I know there are some crisis centers for those in need that are going through pregnancies and those types of issues. There are certainly our local hospital has a foundation as well that folks can donate to. So
you mentioned a very important name there, Abraham Lincoln Memorial Hospital. I can't think of a better way to put an extra $50 on the table in honor of somebody than to send it to Memorial Hospital, and they'll see that it's spent well.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's if you want to honor the memory of a loved one, like I said, there are certainly lots of different ways, and we'll do our best to try and come up with more, but maybe in order to come up with more, we should honor the memory of our sponsors and run a few commercials here.
Yeah, well, we hope they're not in memory, but let's go right ahead with our commercials, James. Back live in the studios here, the program of Viewpoint. We had the guests scheduled, and we lost our guest. So our associate, Loyd Kirby, and the old man have had to put on our big boy broadcasting pants this morning and go this thing alone, so to speak. We're entreating the visitors who visit us on the air. 648-5510 would be our phone number to give us a ring and talk to us. The subject this morning has been thus far, donations to people who have left us, or in memory of people who have left us. And the theory being behind our conversation is a lot of people sometimes not sure exactly where to write the check or to whom to write the check. And give it to the funeral director of the family, and they'll see to it that it goes to the charity of designation. There are a lot of local charities that we have mentioned already this morning. Among them, the several fraternal orders, and that would also include the ladies. It used to be just fraternal. Now they don't say maternal anymore. So in any event, times have changed, and we have ladies' organizations who are just as important to our community as men's fraternal lodges. Fraternal lodges usually always have some charity, and I mentioned earlier on the Elks Crippled Children Trust, and I commented about that at the time because in today's terminology, people say, "Oh, you can't talk about it like that." Well, the fact of the matter is the youngster or the individual, whomever it may be, is crippled, period. And there's no else way to describe it. Handicapped, yes, but that doesn't get the money. Handicap doesn't have the same selling as crippled does if you're asking for money. So think about various ways to donate to charity in this community. This is our own community, and as Mr. Kirby suggested, several of us, several that you might want to think about. And I'm going to go back to the Salvation Army again. They come first and foremost in communities like this. I don't think we have any cognizance at all of the depth of good that an organization like the Salvation Army can do in a small community like Lincoln, Illinois.
Yeah, absolutely. They, of course, have the food pantry that we mentioned before the break, but they also, actually, I had Bill Dolan and another member of the Salvation Army, someone who works there on a different show, and they were talking about some of the services they perform. When there was a crash, I believe, out on I-55, they were right there with some soup and some blankets and things to help the folks that were stranded at the time. And there's certainly, Salvation Army is certainly one of those organizations that steps up to the plate and helps. But as you mentioned, there are other organizations, community organizations. The Kiwanis Club certainly locally is very active and helps support a lot of the different needs in the community, tries to meet some of the needs. The Elks Club, as you mentioned, Lincoln Women's Club, as you mentioned, certainly is involved in community service. The Rotary Club, once again, also involved in community service here in the town. And another organization that we haven't mentioned yet, but certainly provides a service to those here in the county, the Oasis Senior Center certainly does a lot for the seniors in our community.
The word senior kind of applies to somebody I know. And I noticed yesterday, by the way, just happened to note that there were a number of cars at the Oasis, which was nice to see because from the time that COVID hit us, right. By the way, if we'd have had Irma Potter in charge of things here in Logan County, COVID wouldn't have crossed the McLean County line. But seriously, she was not a bureaucrat. She was somebody who just saw a need to get something done, and by gosh, she did it. And that's why we're talking about need in the community. And there are a number of places to remember that while all these great national organizations are wonderful and they do a magnificent job, money in the community is what speaks. So 648-5510, we'd invite somebody to call in and make a comment about some favorite charity of theirs. We won't charge them a nickel.
Won't charge them a nickel, and it's totally tax deductible.
Oh, speaking of charities, I'm looking to my right shoulder, and I'm looking at Jim's cat, which takes me to the Humane Society. Mm-hmm. Tremendous amount of good in this community.
Absolutely.
We'd be overrun with dogs and cats here if we didn't have the Humane Society. And that would not be a nice thing for the community.
Right.
I don't know. I wish I could tell you who's in charge of the Humane Society now, but I can tell you where they're located, right out there on the route. Well, it wouldn't be Route 66. It's Route 55 as it goes around north of town.
Yeah, Old 66, I think. A lot of people call it that, but yeah, they're certainly out there, and they certainly, will accept in-kind donations such as food and things for the animals, as well as good old cash and money. So certainly a worthwhile organization. Another place I was going to mention this. One of the places I was looking as we were talking here. There's a website out there for those who are interested in looking online called LoganCountyResources.org. And we'll give a tip of the hat to Angie Stoltenberg at the Lincoln Memorial Hospital Health Collaborative. I know she is a big proponent of this website, and if folks are looking for services or organizations within Lincoln and within Logan County, that is a great resource that lists a lot of different types of organizations, educational organizations, places for food, health concerns, abuse support, different religious organizations, disaster relief, all the things we've talked about, senior services, service organizations. So if you're looking for a resource, sort of a one-stop shop as far as what is available in Lincoln and in the Logan County area, LoganCountyResources.org is that website. Everything is categorized by the service or the type of an organization it is, and even WLCN's in there under the media category, so we made the list. Look at us. So, but again, if you're not familiar with what's available in Logan County, that's a great resource that is kind of flies under the radar, but is certainly a worthwhile place to stop and get some information. Speaking of flying under the radar, another organization we've had representatives, Curtis Fox was with us from the Logan County Airport and the museum out there, which is certainly a worthwhile cause.
That was a good pun. worked that flying in there all right. By the way, they do a well around. That's kind of a quiet organization, but they serve a real need. I go back to the beginning of the Logan County Airport. Larry Schroyer was a correspondent, a roving correspondent in those days. He had his 3x5 speed Graflex camera, and he went everywhere. And he was what they call there's a name for it. And he reported into the pantographs and the state journals and so forth.
A stringer.
And Stringer. Thank you, sir. I knew I had him on the air for some reason. Anyway, Larry was very interested in Logan County Airport can trace its origin back to the efforts of Larry Schroyer, who was a pretty doggone good newsman at the time. Mm-hmm. So, again, we're trying to, by the way, there's an organization called Nielsen, and Nielsen puts out ratings on organizations and see what their leadership is or their listenership and so forth. We're trying to get a new Nielsen rating for the Burton, Beaton View, and Broadwell group that are listening to us this morning. So 648-5510. We'd like to know if you're out there. Be nice to Loyd because he's a real nice man. Go right ahead. 648-5510. Think of in something unusual that you might want to think of it for a community donation. We'll leave it those two words right there, community donation. Loyd's done a great job with his little handheld device there, searching, and he's done a fine job. I don't know that most housewives would be able to do what he's doing.
I don't know about that either, but just doing what we can here. So obviously, I guess we mentioned this already as far as the Park District being out there and being a community resource. Also, there's a local YMCA now that offers programming to the community, and I know they do an after-school program with students. So another option if you're looking for places to maybe send a little money in honor of someone to help support the youth of the community.
I can't think of a nicer way, Loyd and listeners, and you too, Jim. No, seriously, I can't think of a nicer way to honor somebody than to make a donation to the community in their honor. Lets them know that you thought well of them and the family, and a small community like, particularly in these times right now. A lot of crazy things going on. There's a lot of places to put your money, some of which are not so hot. You might, if any of you have been impressed by a particular TV commercial, we'd like to know about it and what you thought about it. There are some outstanding ones out there. I refer specifically to the Shriners Hospital commercials, which are quite hard-hitting. 648-5510. Let us know what you're thinking out there.
Yeah, another organization, you mentioned it. It is a part of the sort of a governmental organization. The Logan County Health Department certainly does a lot for the community. The Logan County Emergency Management Agency and Salvation Army, as you mentioned, certainly under the area, again, looking at logancountyresources.org. Those folks are listed under the disaster relief area, and they certainly do provide a lot of services and a lot of comfort for folks who are going through disasters, whether it's weather such as we had recently or other types of hardships that they might be facing.
Well,
feel free to jump in here.
They just had yesterday there was a tornado of sorts, went through east of Decatur, I'm sorry. Fortunately, we didn't have any community damage, but a lot of people suffered some serious losses. And a place like Logan County Salvation Army would be a great spot to have some money in a nest, kind of a nest egg for events such as that. We never know what the sun's going to do to us as it moves around the curve here.
Yeah, absolutely. And sort of along that same line, Community Action Partnership, we've mentioned them before, but I know they do a lot in terms of supporting the community and supporting those who are in need, not necessarily because of storms, but just being in need and facing some hardships. And there are certainly other organizations. There is a Lincoln Parents Center, which is actually housed, I believe it's housed in the Salvation Army, same location as the Salvation Army, but they certainly provide resources to young parents and parents of all types, really, those about to become parents, as well as those who maybe have newborns and are sort of learning the ropes of parenting. That would be another worthwhile organization, again, locally based, that could certainly use a donation from those with the ability to give.
Well, parenting is a sudden thing for some people, and that sudden thing can suddenly mean a huge financial wall for somebody to pay. So money placed in a reserve for people in those categories is not a bad thing.
That is true. That is very much true. Once again, I'm just kind of surfing the website here, trying to find other organizations that maybe we haven't missed or that we haven't touched on yet. There are certainly health organizations, the hospital we mentioned, hospice organizations, different rehabilitative services and emergency services, as well as different therapy organizations. So, I mean, I guess the way I would think about it is what might be meaningful to your to the loved one that you're in, whose name you're making the donation, and then maybe find something that sort of goes along with their interests or preferences.
Well, the bottom line on that is, Loyd, that if they just send it to a fraternal order, be it the Moose or the Eagles or the Elks or whomever, or Reddy's organizations, and say they want to use for the benefit of the community,
sure,
they can rest assured that that's exactly what will happen. They won't put it in the pantry somewhere. It won't go away. It'll be
right.
put in the right position. You're going to get about 5 minutes, folks, or less than that, before the old man declares that he's tired of talking. And Mrs. Gossett would find that very difficult to believe. 648-5510, Viewpoint this morning, and our subject matter would be donations to the community for those that are in need. And Lordy knows there's a lot of daily need out there every day. Our associate this morning, Mr. Loyd Kirby, we appreciate having you join us, Loyd. You've been a real boon to us. I said boon, not bone.
Well, either or. So.
648-5510, 217-648-5510. We need one final call.
We're going to be silent until the phone rings. Yeah, but once again, LoganCountyResources.org is the website I was referencing. And, of course, if you have an internet connection, you can simply go online to any search engine. Google seems to be the search engine of choice for many people. If you just type in Logan County, Illinois charities or charitable organizations, you'll get a list of different organizations that some of which perhaps you were aware of and some maybe you weren't aware of. And, again, lots of different types of organizations, different functions and community or audiences that they serve, and certainly should be able to find an organization there to honor the memory of a loved one.
Mr. Kirby, you mentioned earlier this morning the Logan County Genealogical Society. They're on Chicago Street. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily a welfare per se,
right?
But an organization does a lot of good for a lot of people. By the way, does anybody out there in the listening area watch Finding Your Roots, which appears each Tuesday night? The black gentleman, Mr. Dr. Henry Lewis Gates Jr., is a moderator of that, and they go back and find somebody's history from way back. Which I want to mention, we had an old gentleman in my family, quirky as could be, but brilliant. And he researched the family history. And much to my mother's delight, he found out that we went back as far as Richard the Lionhearted.
Oh, wow.
My mother used to brag about it. I said, he wasn't a very nice guy, Mom.
Right.
217-648-5510. You got 2 minutes to call and tell us goodbye.
Not permanently, though.
No.
Back next week. So, but yeah, genealogy that's an area that I want to get more into because the way our family has worked out, I'm the last Kirby in our bloodline, the male with the surname.
Seriously?
So I had a great uncle, my grandfather's brother, who researched, before the internet was available, researched our family history back to England in the 1600s. And since I'm the last Kirby from that bloodline, he gave me 4 or 5 boxes of just land maps and negatives of pictures of land plots and marriage certificates and all sorts of pictures and negatives and things that he compiled.
They sit. They sit in your house.
They are, and again, it's something I want to get into. I just haven't had the time to do it yet. But
well, it's a science.
Absolutely.
This gentleman in our family, he drew a very, very complicated circle, and I have no idea. Reading it is really pretty difficult. And I need to take this down to somebody, to Genealogical Society, and have them show me how to read that thing out. Viewpoint is supporting, and we didn't find any viewpoints at all. So I think at this point in time, we'll declare the program officially over. And thank you very much for not participating.
The preceding program is a presentation of WLCN 96.3 FM and WLCNonline.com.